we will talk about the various categories of healthcare waste. Now, before we come to the categories of healthcare waste, we must understand what is waste. Waste is basically anything that is unwanted or discarded after the primary usage. Now, in waste can be of various types. Now, what is healthcare waste? Healthcare waste is the waste which is generated in a healthcare settings, and it ranges from a wide variety of substances like this waste could be non-hazardous, hazardous, and also infectious. Now, healthcare waste has been defined by WHO as the waste which is generated within the healthcare facilities, the research centers, and the laboratories, but related to healthcare procedures. In addition to this, it also includes the type of waste which originate from minor and scattered sources, including waste produced in the healthcare which is undertaken at home. For example, home dialysis, administration of insulin, recuperative care, etc. Now let us see how we can categorize this healthcare waste. The healthcare waste can be divided into various categories based on the classification given by World Health Organization. We can divide this into the sharps, the pathological waste, chemical waste, infectious waste, pharmaceutical and cytotoxic waste, and radioactive waste. So we will now learn about the different categories of waste, what all types of substances fall into each category of waste. So to begin with, first we have sharps. Now in the sharps we include used or unused sharps, for example hypodermic or intravenous needles or other types of needles. We have a large number of needles which we'll use in the hospitals, for example the lumbar puncture needles, the scalpels which we use, the syringes, auto-disposable syringes which have needles attached to the syringes, the infusion sets, and we also have other kinds of sharps, for example pipettes, knives, blades, and also broken glass. Because all these can be contaminated, because they are used for patient care, they can be contaminated with the blood of the patient or the body fluids of the patient. So they are also considered part of the healthcare and are both hazardous as well as infectious. Then we have the other category of waste which is categorized as infectious waste. Now any waste that is contaminated with the blood or body fluids, for example we have got cotton swabs, we have got the gauze pieces, we have the bed sheets, the linen, and also the personal protective equipment worn by the doctors while performing various procedures. For example, we have got the reusable aprons, gloves. So all these can be part of the infectious waste. Then we also have the laboratory cultures and microbiological stocks, the culture plates which are used in the laboratory for diagnosing the various infections. These also come under infectious waste. And also waste which include excreta and other materials which have been contaminated and infected with patients which have been infected with the infectious diseases or in isolation wards. For example, we have the Ebola patients, we have got the infectious diseases patients which are kept in isolation. Those their bed sheets, their clothes which they are given, all those are also contaminated and they all fall under the category of infectious waste. Now we come to the pathological waste. Under the pathological waste, we have got the human organs, tissues or body fluids, body parts like the fetus coming from the labor room. We have got the various organs or parts of the organs or tissues which are taken out during the operation theatres, and also the unused blood products from the blood bank. All these come under the pathological waste. The next category under the WHO classification is the pharmaceutical waste. In the pharmaceutical waste are medicines which are expired and no longer needed now. They cannot be used and so they become waste as per the definition of waste. These need to be properly disposed. Then we have got items which are contaminated or containing certain pharmaceuticals. Then we have substances with genotoxic properties. These all fall under the pharmaceutical waste. Now we have the chemical waste. Now, chemical substances are used in various places. For example, we have used in the laboratory as laboratory reagents. We have got the film developer that is used in the radiology for the development of the X-ray films. We have got disinfectants that are either expired or no longer used, and we also have solvents. So all these come under the category of chemical substances which are used and fall in the category of chemical waste. The other category of chemical waste are the waste that contains high content of heavy metals. For example, we have batteries. We also have broken thermometers. Similarly, we have got the blood pressure gauges and other equipments also which use mercury. They can also cause harm to the body and also fall under the category of heavy metals or the chemical waste. The next category that we come to is the radioactive waste. Now, radioactive waste consists of unused liquids from radiotherapy or the laboratory research. It also contains contaminated glassware of containing the radioactive materials, the contaminated packages or adsorbent paper which also has some kind of radioactivity in it, the urine and excreta from patients treated or tested with unsealed radionuclides and sealed sources. So all these categories, all these type of waste come under the category of radioactive waste. And then we have another category, that is the non-hazardous waste. Then we have got the waste paper which comes. We have got the kitchen waste, that is the vegetable waste. The waste paper will come from your office stationery, which is also, you have office, you have record sections, you have got the case sheets which are used in the wards and OPD slips. So all these categories are not infected with the or contaminated with the blood or body fluids, and as a result they are considered as non-hazardous waste. We have learned today about the categories of waste as categorized by the healthcare WHO or the World Health Organization. We will be discussing on the public health risk of healthcare waste. First, we must understand how we can categorize the healthcare waste. As per WHO, the healthcare waste is categorized into hazardous and non-hazardous waste. The hazardous waste is further categorized into infectious and non-infectious waste. This can be further categorized as per WHO into SHARPS, infectious waste, pathological waste, pharmaceutical and cytotoxic waste. Then we have chemical waste. Various chemicals are used also in healthcare. For example, mercury is a very important heavy metal that is used. You have lead and various other chemicals like detergents, disinfectants. These are also the chemicals which are used in the healthcare activities and pose a risk to human health. And then of course we have the radioactive waste, which is also produced during various research activities and also sometimes in the radiological department. Now, if we take healthcare waste to be 100%, then the division of the waste is the non-hazardous waste is 75% and 25% only is the hazardous waste. And then the rest of the categories of the hazardous waste can be divided further into infectious waste. Infectious waste is all waste basically which is the waste which comes from the contaminated articles of the blood and body fluids. Then we have the sharp waste. They are the needles, they are the blades which are used. Then we have the pathological waste, and then we have the pharmaceutical and the chemical waste, and then we have the cytotoxic or radiological waste, which is a very small quantity, that is less than 1%, but it is most hazardous waste. Now let us come to the various risks which are posed by the various categories of the hazardous healthcare waste. So we have a physical risk, we have a biological risk, we have a microbiological risk, we have a radiological risk, and then we have an environmental risk. Let us go through and understand each risk individually. So to begin with, we have the physical risk. What are the physical risks that the healthcare waste can pose? The first and foremost are the injuries. You can have effect of ionizing radiation from the radiological waste that is used, burns from lasers which are used, noise pollution from the various machinery which is used for the management of waste, and then hazards from electricity, because lot of this equipment which is used for managing waste is also dependent on electricity. Then we have the chemical risks. The chemical risks includes burns, Then we have the effect of gaseous fumes. Again, by the burning of the incineration of the waste, we have a large amount of gaseous fumes which are very toxic. Allergies, especially by the various chemicals which are used, the disinfectants which are used, detergents which are used. Then we have got damage to the tissues after absorption, and mutations or change in the genetic material of the living cells which comes from your cytotoxic and the radiological waste. Now we come to the microbiological waste which can cause infections. So they are very infectious diseases which can be spread from the hospitals, and you may also come across this concept that though we go to the hospitals for getting treated, many times we come back with more potent infections. Now we have the radioactive waste. The impact of the radioactive waste is determined by the type and extent of the exposure. The exposure can result in headache, dizziness and vomiting. These are very common, but in case there are larger doses, the harm can be much more serious. Healthcare waste has also an impact on the environment. The result is the release of toxic fumes which contains gases and chemicals. And the most important of these are the dioxins and the furans. And there is much debate on this because dioxins and furans are chemicals which last in the environment for millions of years. Again, you know about greenhouse gases that are causing the global warming and the climate change. Another component is the mercury and heavy metals which are there in the healthcare waste. When the waste is improperly treated and disposed, this can cause a lot of harm to the human health and environment. Now, who are the people basically who get affected because of this healthcare waste? Naturally, those people who are generating the waste, those who are managing the waste, that is the doctors, nurses, lab technicians, health workers and waste handlers. Also the patients, because the patients are in the environment where the healthcare waste is generated. Then we have visitors to the hospital which are also exposed to the healthcare waste. The waste scavengers, especially when the waste is not properly disposed of, and general community of course is another group which gets affected. Now, what are the routes of exposure of the waste? The route of exposure of a chemical waste could be inhalation, absorption through the skin, and ingestion, that is taking inside the mouth of the contaminated food. The route of transmission of an infectious waste basically could be air. We have by direct contact when we touch the patients, and then we have through fomites. The water, when the waste water from the hospital, it gets mixed up with the drinking water system and so can affect. And the sharp injuries can also directly cause the implantation of the infectious agents into the body of the waste handlers. Now, what are the preventive measures? How can we protect ourselves from the hazards of these waste? So we have a hierarchy of controls: sharp management, hand hygiene. We have wearing appropriate personal protective equipment, following all the procedures for management of healthcare waste as has been laid down in the national guidelines, handling any spill of the body or blood fluids, environmental cleaning by using the appropriate disinfectants, and immunization, mainly hepatitis B and tetanus. Then we have annual checkups and training to make us all aware about what are the problems which can be posed by this. Now let us come to how we can carry out the risk assessment of a particular sample or situation. Now take a blood sample of a patient. Sit back and imagine the likelihood of a needle stick injury happening. Do not copy what others will write in this particular case when you are trying to assess the risk. Remember that the likelihood will change depending upon which area of the hospital you are in, how experienced you are, how patient you are, how well trained you are, and how much importance you give to waste management. Now, you should rate the likelihood of the risk, 1 as extremely unlikely. That okay, you may not have been exposed, for example, you hardly got pricked, you were wearing gloves, you took all precautions. You are unlikely, you are very likely, you are extremely likely, and you are certain. If you have had a very bad sharp injury, you are also suffering already from some immunodeficiency disease, then it is certain that you may have a chance of infecting yourself. Then you rate the consequences. For example, minor injury, that is no injury or damage, near miss only. Moderate, that is first stage injury, minor sickness or damage. Serious is moderate injury or sickness, and major is major damage, and catastrophe is again catastrophic damage. So these are the 5 levels in which you have to rate your consequence. And this is a grid which have been prepared in which the consequence has been put on the y-axis and the x-axis the likelihood. You get a grid. The green one means that the risk of a damage is very low. Yellow one means the likelihood is medium, and the high is the red one. Now, you need to institute certain control measures for controlling the risk assessment, and these could be elimination, safe place options, that is, you have to identify places which may be safe, and safe person options. Okay, so for example, you can wear PPE, you can have the proper storage. So these are the safe person options. So with this, I think you may have understood that what are the risks that a healthcare waste poses and how to control the healthcare waste. Healthcare waste, or the waste which is generated due to healthcare activities, are hazardous and infectious in nature. This has raised concerns all over the world, and a number of international policies have been put in place. Let us look at the various international policies in relation to healthcare waste management, as well as the India's compliance to these policies. Now, what are the main reasons why these international policies have been put in place? First and foremost are the global issues like the air pollution, global warming, climate change, and ocean pollution. These affect countries across continents. The second reason is that the environment degradation and pollution is a consequence of preventable human actions and in turn impact human health. And since these actions are basically preventable, we can, through international cooperation, build a sustainable and healthy environment. Now, if we list the various international conventions and policies which have a bearing or relation with the healthcare waste management, the first and foremost is the Montreal Protocol. The Agenda 21 deals with regulating the production and use of ozone depleting chemicals. Another important convention is the Basel Convention on transboundary movement of hazardous waste and their disposal. Persistent organic pollutants are very potent, harmful chemicals which persist in the environment for a long period of time, and the Stockholm Convention addresses the persistent organic pollutants. You all must be knowing that mercury is a very hazardous heavy metal and is on a phase out from most of the hospitals and healthcare institutions in India and many other countries abroad. Minamata Convention looks into the issues addressing mercury and how to deal with these. Now let us go over these various conventions one by one. The first one that we will discuss is the Basel Convention on the transboundary movement of hazardous waste and their disposal. This convention was opened for signature on 22nd March 1989 and entered into force on 5th May 1992. By February 2018, 185 states and the European Union are parties to the convention. Now, what are the aims of this Basel Convention? The main aim is to reduce the generation of hazardous waste, promotion of environmentally sound management of this waste at the place where it is disposed, and restriction of the transboundary movement, which is not in accordance with the principles of environmentally sound management. And the last aim is that it helps in implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, there are two types of waste which are not basically included in this. One is the radioactive waste, and the second is the waste which are derived from the natural operation of a ship. Let us see how India has complied with the Basel Convention. First is that we have in 1986 itself an Environment Protection Act came into being. Because Basel Convention deals with the hazardous waste, transboundary movement of the hazardous waste, so the hazardous waste management and handling rules were notified by the Government of India in 1989, and these rules incorporated the standards for incineration and the alternatives to incineration. These include the non-burn technologies, that is the autoclave, microwave, hydroclave, and other chemical technologies. Hazardous and other waste management and transboundary rules were modified and revised in 2016, and the biomedical waste management rules were also brought out in 2016. We did have the biomedical waste management and handling rules of 1989, but they were also revised in 2016 and they were further amended in 2018. Now let us see the another convention. This is the Stockholm Convention on Persistent Organic Pollutants. This convention was adopted on 22nd May 2001 in Stockholm, Sweden, and it came into force on 17th May 2004. As of June 2018, there are 182 parties to the convention, which is actually 181 states and the European Union. Now, what are persistent organic pollutants? Because Stockholm Convention basically deals with the issues related to persistent organic pollutants. Persistent organic pollutants are also known as POPs. They are carbon-based compounds. They have very long half-lives, so they remain persistent in the environment for many thousands of years also. They are trans-boundary pollutants, which means that they cross the continent boundaries, and so they affect globally a large area, a number of countries and continents. Now, what are the effects of these POPs on human health? They have been implicated in the causation of a large number of cancers. They affect our endocrine system and cause various endocrinal abnormalities. They have been also associated with birth defects. They affect our reproductive system as well as our immune system, thus making us prone to many infectious diseases and also autoimmune diseases. There is a greater susceptibility of disease because of our exposure to the persistent organic chemicals and pollutants. And because we are exposed to these chemicals for a long time, they enter our body, but there is no mechanism in which they can be excreted, and so they accumulate in our body, and the longer that we are exposed to them, the longer they stay in our body, the more damage that they cause. Now, what are the guidelines that should be followed, or what are the provisions of the Stockholm Convention? Let us see this one by one. According to this convention, it is important to prohibit or eliminate the production and use, as well as the import and export of intentionally produced POPs that are listed in Annex A to the convention. Second is to restrict the production and use and import or export of the intentionally produced POPs that are also listed as Annex B to the convention. And third is to reduce or eliminate the release from unintentionally produced POPs that are listed in Appendix C or Annex C to the convention. Now, there are other guidelines also that we must adhere to under the Stockholm Convention. Stockholm Convention promotes the use of best available techniques and best environmental practices for preventing the release of POPs into the environment. It also ensures that the stockpiles and the waste consisting of or containing or contaminated with POPs are managed safely and in an environmentally sound manner. The detailed procedures for listing of the new POPs are also available in Annex A, B and C. Now, other provisions of the convention relate to the development of the implementation plans in Article 7, the information exchange in Article 9, the public information awareness and education in Article 10, research, development and monitoring Article 11, technical assistance Article 12, financial resources and mechanisms in 13, reporting in 15, effectiveness evaluation in 16 and non-compliance in 17. So you can see that how much detailed the provisions of the Stockholm Convention are. Now, how has India complied with the Stockholm Convention? India had signed the Stockholm Convention in May 2002 and ratified it in 2006. The first step was to develop a national implementation plan. India was also the first country to ban the incineration of the polyvinyl chloride under the Biomedical Waste Management and Handling Rules, which had come out in 1998, and these rules were framed under the Environment Protection Act of 1986. Seeing the conventions and other developments under the Stockholm Convention, the revised rules were brought out and notified by Government of India as the Biomedical Waste Management Rules in 2016, in which the decentralized systems are allowed only if a central biomedical waste management treatment facility does not exist within a distance of 75 kilometers. And after the coming of these rules, all the incinerations in all the major hospitals and other healthcare facilities has been stopped. Now, again, the Biomedical Waste Management Rules 2016, which have also been further amended in 2018 March, the rules and the amended rules, they also have other important things for the compliance with the Stockholm Convention. First and foremost is the phase out of the chlorinated plastic bags. And the deadline for that is now March 2019. And also there are provisions that have set in the incineration emission standards for dioxins and furans, which must be maintained if the incineration process is going on. It also requires that existing incinerator to be upgraded within 2 years to meet these standards. The resistance time has also been documented, and all these standards and criteria are available in the biomedical waste management rules. There is also focus and stress on the segregation at source and the recycling of the plastic medical waste through recyclers. And it is very important for the recycling of the plastic medical waste, it should be given only to the authorized recyclers. To prevent the pilferage that had been occurring earlier through the healthcare facility for the recycled waste, there has also been a barcode system which has been put in place so that the waste that is generated at particular locations is tracked till it is sent for disposal. Now comes the third convention, that is the Minamata Convention. The Minamata Convention basically deals with mercury. It was adopted and opened for signature on 10th October 2013 at a diplomatic conference in Kumamoto, Japan. It entered into force on 16th August 2017, and the number of signatories by May 2018 was 128. Now, this Minamata Convention on Mercury is an international treaty which is designed to protect the human health and the environment from anthropogenic emissions and releases of mercury and mercury compounds. India is also a very strong supporter of the Minamata Convention, and the objectives of this convention are to ban the new mercury mines and to phase out all those previously existing mercury mines. There is a guideline to phase out and phase down the mercury use in the number of products and processes. Then we have got the other important objective of the Minamata Convention is international regulation of the informal sector for artisanal and small scale gold mining. It addresses its interim storage and disposal once it becomes its waste, and also addresses the sites contaminated by mercury as well as the health issues. If there is mercury waste that you come across, for example, if there is a thermometer which has broken, you can collect the mercury carefully and underwater, and then this becomes mercury waste and it has to be handed over to the registered recyclers. Now let us see how India has complied to the Minamata Convention. The Ministry of Health and Family Welfare has issued a guideline on phasing out the use of mercury in the healthcare sector. There are Indian public health standards which recommend the use of mercury alternatives by the hospital. Digital thermometer is one such example. And there are various state directives which limit the use of mercury and have shifted to alternatives. Many private and public hospitals in the country have phased out the use of mercury as a requirement for obtaining NABH and ISO certification. They are not given these certifications till you do not phase out the mercury. India has also made a draft quality control order for digital thermometers, Android and mercury sphygmometers in 2006, and a gazette notification for making the standard mandatory is now in process. So we have gone a long way, and there is still more to do for us to fully comply with the Minamata Convention. So this was about the international policies and how India has been complying to the international policies which have been framed and put in place for dealing with the healthcare waste. Now we will discuss about segregation. And segregation means basically separation. We will come into the proper definition of segregation, but today we will discuss basically about the segregation in accordance to the healthcare waste, the segregation related to the healthcare waste and also in accordance with the Indian regulation, because the different countries have their own regulations, their own guidelines, their different legislations regarding healthcare waste. Some countries do have very stringent regulations, whereas other countries have not still brought out the regulations and they are still in the process of it. And the different color coded or the waste bins which are used are different in different countries. So we are going to today discuss the segregation which is been adopted as per the Government of India rules. Now before we go into what is biomedical waste or healthcare waste, how do we define it in India? This has been defined by the legislation which has come, called the Biomedical Waste Management Rules. This was brought about by the Government of India in its Gazette notification on 28th of March 2016. And these rules have been further modified and amended 15th March 2018. And so whatever we will be discussing are in accordance or in compliance with both these legislations, that is Biomedical Waste Management Rules 2016 and as amended in 2018. So as it has been defined, biomedical waste as per this legislation has been defined as the waste which is generated during the diagnosis, treatment and immunization of human beings or animals or research activities pertaining thereto in the production or testing of biologicals or in the various health camps, and including categories mentioned in Schedule 1 of the Biomedical Waste Management Rules 2016 as amended and notified under the Environment Protection Act 1986 by the Government of India. So these rules are available on the internet as well and on the CPCB website also, and you can go through these rules in details for further information. Now let us come to what is segregation. Basically, segregation means keeping different kinds of waste separate in defined color-coded waste groups or streams. It is very important that segregation or separation into different kinds of waste should happen at the point of generation and immediately after the generation. This, in fact, is the most important step in the whole process of biomedical waste management. So what is the importance of segregation? Why must we segregate? Now, segregation, as we have seen, that segregation of healthcare waste from the non-hazardous waste is very important, and especially in case of healthcare waste, this is of paramount importance because the waste which is generated from any healthcare facility constitute both hazardous and non-hazardous. But the non-hazardous component is almost 85% of the waste that is generated, and only about 10 to 15% of the waste in a healthcare facility, may it be a hospital, may it be a research center, is infectious or hazardous. Now, if we do not segregate these two types of waste, then the whole waste will become 100% hazardous and infectious, and we will have to treat it as the whole waste, 100% waste, as infectious or hazardous waste. And as you can understand, because it is hazardous and infectious, so it will naturally require more cost, more equipment, more time, more manpower, and so the cost of treating the whole waste increases to a large extent. Now, in addition to this, there are other advantages also that we have by segregating the waste, especially at the point of generation. One of the important advantages is that it separates the recyclables from the hazardous waste. So, we are able to take out the waste that can be recycled right before the waste is taken for treatment, and so we are able to generate energy, or we are able to conserve energy in a way, because we are not wasting the items. Now, the third reason is that waste can be treated according to its hazardous nature. And we have got, as per the BMW rules 2016, that different categories of waste have to be treated and disposed of in a different manner. So, if we segregate the waste as per their treatment options, the segregation principles as per BMW rules have been framed in such a way that the disposal and the treatment of these waste is different, and so they are categorized in a different manner. Now, this also reduces the cost of transport, treatment and disposal, and improves the occupational safety and patient safety in the hospital, because we are categorizing the infectious waste separately, the non-infectious waste separately, the hazardous waste separately, and so the harms or the hazards, the infectious nature is kept contained in a particular container in such a way that the safety of both the person who is generating, who is collecting, transporting, disposing is taken care of, and similarly the exposure to the patients and the visitors is minimized, and we take care of their safety as well. And most importantly is that this segregation also helps to reduce the carbon footprint of the healthcare facility. Now we come to the color coding which is used for segregation. As I mentioned that during segregation we segregate it according to the different color codes. Now these color codes may differ from one country to another. What is the importance of color coding for segregation? Now color coding is adopted means to combine different waste groups with similar hazards in one main group. So it is not one type of waste will come into this, but various types of waste fall into one category and they are color coded as into one color coding. This also makes the segregation more easy and understandable, because even the low skilled workers who may not be very educated but they have a problem with language or reading problems are also able to segregate. They know, all right, so this has to go into the yellow color coded bin. So they are all aware that this is the waste which goes into the yellow bin. They don't need to remember what should be the name for the yellow bin or what is the any other difficult terminology for the yellow bin. They don't also need to read the labels. If all the bins were of the similar color and only labeled, then one has to actually read the labels, which is not required if the colors are different. Now, as per the Biomedical Waste Management Rules 2016 as amended in Government of India, we have got 4 categories of waste as per the color coding. As you can see, we have got one red bin, we have got a yellow bin, we have got a blue colored marking bin, and we have got a white translucent tamper proof container. So let us see what are the various types of waste which will go into each color coded bin and how they are going to differ from each other. Now we come to first is the yellow category. Now the yellow category falls a number of items in this. The first and the foremost is the human and the animal anatomical waste. For example, you can see the body organs, the placenta, all these will go into this category. Then we have got the soiled waste. Soiled waste meaning any waste item that has come in contamination with the blood or body fluids. We do not include plastics here because this waste of the yellow category as per the Indian legislation has to go in for incineration. So any waste that is of plastic nature is not included here because it will cause a lot of fumes, dioxins, furans to be released during incineration and can be harmful. So only things like infected cotton, soiled sheets, the gauze pieces, the clothes of the patient if they have been soiled, these are put into the yellow bin. Then we have got discarded or the expired medicines. This is another category which comes in the yellow waste bin. We have got the chemical wastes, as we learnt about the types of chemicals which are also used. We have got the discarded linen, the discarded mattress, and the beddings contaminated with blood or body fluids, and also pre-treated microbiology, biotechnology or other clinical laboratory waste that is included in this category. And for example, we have the culture plates, we have got these stalks, and all these things will come and have to be put into the yellow category waste. Now we come to the red category waste. The red category waste basically is the waste generated from disposable items such as tubings, bottles, intravenous tubes and sets, catheters, urine bags, plastic syringes which are without needles, and fixed needle syringes, and vacutainers with their needles cut, and gloves. So all these, as you can see, that most of them are basically plastic items, and so they are put in the red category because the red category waste is actually autoclaved. So it will not generate any harmful gases or chemicals which may be released in the environment. So all the plastic things are put in the red category. Now we come to the white category. The white category basically is, you saw the puncture-proof, tamper-proof, leak-proof container which is translucent in case, and all these types of waste, for example, the sharps, needles, without the syringes, we don't put the syringes here. Then we have got the suture needles, the lumbar puncture needles, other kinds of knives or blades, all these discarded items are put in the white category. And then we have got the blue category waste. The blue category waste consists of 2 categories which are put in the blue containers. One is the glassware and the second is the metallic body implants. So the glassware basically has, for example, that which is contaminated either with the body fluids or with the medicines, chemicals. For example, you have got the broken vials, then you have got the broken test tubes containing blood, you can have the blood sample tubes, and also we have got the metal implants which are put into this. Now many times we also may need to disinfect these and then put it into the blue category, and the blue category waste which is put into the blue lined translucent container, which is also a tamper proof container. So these are the various categories that are basically used for during segregation and as per the BMW rules 2016 and as amended in 2018. After the waste is generated, how is it collected? So we will discuss collection of waste. Waste has been generated. Before waste is collected and transported, it needs to be packed and labeled. So what is the procedure of correctly packing and labeling the waste before it is transported? Packing ensures, why should we pack? Is it really required to pack, or can we just pick up the waste and take it? Is there any specific procedure? That is what comes to our mind. Now, packing ensures that waste must be safe to be transported, as we have already seen that waste in a healthcare waste is infectious, it could also be hazardous. So, we must ensure that safety to us as a healthcare worker and safety to the environment, safety to the patients and the visitors must be ensured. So, waste must be packed. Waste must be collected in the various containers as per their categories. These are the few containers that have been given. For sharp waste, we have white, translucent, puncture-proof, tamper-proof container. For a cytotoxic waste, we have containers with cytotoxic symbols. We have got a radioactive waste and we have infectious waste. So these are the different categories of waste. All the waste bags and sharp containers should never be filled more than 3/4, and after they are filled 3/4, they should be securely tied with a tie and never stapled, because if they are stapled we can always tear the waste bag. For example, this is a waste bag which is made up of non-chlorinated plastic, and if we staple it, it is likely to be torn. After the waste bags have been tied, they need to be weighed, barcoded and labeled. Here you can see in this first picture that it is being barcoded, and the barcoding is being done along with the weighing, and the label is being stuck. As you can see here that the healthcare worker is having all the PPE donned when they are performing these procedures. Once the bag has been taken out from the container and is being packed, bag must be again replaced into the empty container. And please be careful that we have got different categories, colors of the bags, and so the yellow colored bag must be replaced in the yellow colored container only, because the yellow colored containers and the bags, they all go for incineration. So waste which is placed in the yellow category goes for incineration. If we put a red colored bag here, then it will be misread as a waste which has to be autoclaved, and so the right procedure for the management of waste will not be followed. So color coding must be followed for all kinds of waste. This is an information which is generally provided on the label. This is an information as per the Biomedical Waste Management Rules, Government of India 2016 as amended, and you can see that the date, the day, month, year and the date of generation of waste is placed here. That is very important because the healthcare waste is infectious, and label waste will tell us that how long back the waste was generated, because the waste should never be stored more than 48 hours in a healthcare facility. So we can track that how long was this waste packed. And then we have got the waste category number. We have got the waste quantity which is written over here, and we have the sender's name and address, so that if there is any pilferage which happens, anything wrong which has been placed in the waste bag can always be traced back to the person who generated the waste. And also there are emergency contact numbers and addresses. Now what is the importance of labeling? As I have already told you, it helps in identification of waste, and one can be aware of the impending hazards. For example, we have a yellow colored bag for the waste which goes for incineration, that is the biomedical waste. We also have a yellow colored bag which goes for cytotoxic waste. But if we have the label and if we have the correct biohazard symbol, we know that this is a cytotoxic waste and it has to be handled and treated and disposed of differently. It also helps us to select the correct disposal route. As we discussed, it can be incineration, autoclave, will be told by the color and the label of the bag. And we are able to trace the waste from the point of production to the final disposal. Now, what are the ways in which collection of waste done? Only the properly labeled and tightly closed or sealed waste color coded bags or containers should be collected. The appropriate colored sacks and containers should be used, and the logistics staff should be specifically trained. The collection time should be fixed, because it is very important, because the people then come to know that all right, at 10 o'clock our waste will be collected. So whatever generation is being done is done in the beginning, and the time is generally depends upon the place of the generation of the waste. For example, if you have a ward, then normally the rounds take place in the morning at around 8:30, and whatever procedures have to be performed, for example change of dressings and injections and all are given in the morning, and so the forenoon can be planned for the first collection of the waste. Also, if it is a big hospital and a large amount of waste is generated, then twice a day the waste may be collected, whereas if it is a small hospital where there is very little inpatients, then collection of waste may takes place only once a day. And infectious and pathological waste ideally should be collected twice a day, because they are more infectious and more chances of the infection spreading to other people if it keeps lying for long. The general waste should never be collected at the same time, because there can always be chances of mixing, and it should never be collected in the same trolley as the infectious or hazardous waste. Identification of a specific route for transportation of the collected waste is very important. One should not take this waste from areas which are close to the patient areas, the visitor areas where there is a lot of traffic of the visitors, and because there are still chances of infection even though we have packed the waste properly, because sometimes there may be some accidents, there may be some spills, there may be some bag which may tear or break. So it's always better to have a fixed route, a route which is away from the heavy traffic and patient area. An attempt should always be made to minimize the interim storage of waste in the departments. Immediately as soon as the waste is expected to become 3/4 full, it should be collected and sent. So as a result, one should also decide upon the size of the containers and the size of the bags. If we are going to have and expecting a large amount of waste which will be generated, then normally we will take a big containers, but if we expect that a small amount of waste only will be generated, then we take smaller size of the waste containers. Most important is that records must be maintained, and it has been very meticulously documented in the rules 2016 that all records must be maintained. They must be entered in the annual report, which has to be put on the website of each healthcare facility, because this also gives accountability and transparency as to what all procedures are being performed. As far as the healthcare waste collection is concerned, the records that need to be maintained must mention the time of collection, they must mention the type of waste, and also the weight of each of the bags. Now these records have to be maintained in each department of the healthcare facility where the waste is being generated and from where the waste is collected. Again, these records are maintained in the central storage area or the interim storage where the waste is being stored before it can be transported to the central treatment facility for its management. So this is all that we have today for the collection of healthcare waste, and it is very important that you follow all the laid down procedures, as we learnt that all the healthcare workers, people who generate the waste, who transport the waste, who treat and manage waste must wear the personal protective equipment. All these people should be adequately trained how to wear the personal protective equipment, how to do the various procedures and handle the healthcare waste, how they should also remove the personal protective equipment and how to dispose of the personal protective equipment. You also learned that how to actually collect, pack, label and barcode the healthcare waste bags and containers, which must be maintained properly. And all the time, whoever is handling the healthcare waste or any procedure must wear personal protective equipment. They also must be immunized against tetanus and hepatitis B whenever they are involved in these procedures. So regularly at timely intervals they must be immunized. They must also have their health checkups done, and all procedures they must follow.